Welcome into my YouTube channel. JT here with you as we get an opportunity to wrap up week one of the NFL season. And man, was it a doozy. Incredible. A lot of shocking surprises. We all know that that's going to happen. We all know that there's some teams who aren't going to show up in the beginning, and there's going to be other teams that look really good out of the gate. But the injury to Aaron Rodgers was everything. I've been doing this a long time, and before I became a talk show host, I've been a fan, a diehard fan. And I think I've seen it all. And I've been on the radio live when big events went down. A walk-off winner in the NCAA tournament, a walk-off home run in the World Series, a walk-off three in the NBA Finals. You get what I'm talking about. But I don't think I've ever seen anything like the Aaron Rodgers injury comparable to something that dramatic in a moment that was supposed to mean so much. First off, it was on 9/11, the tribute to all of those fallen, those who lost their lives in lower Manhattan. And the Giants had a tribute the night before. The Jets even did a bigger one because it was on 9/11. And all the surviving families who were there, and even the families that lost loved ones, were invited. The Jets did a beautiful job of making sure they paid tribute. The anthem was incredible, the lights. Then all of a sudden, Aaron Rodgers comes out of the tunnel with the American flag. With the American flag running out of the tunnel for the first time at a home game with the Jets uniform on. It was absolutely spectacular. It brought a tear to a lot of people's eyes, especially the Jet fans who were in attendance. So that happens. The game starts. It's Joe Buck and Troy Aikman on the call. It's the most watched Monday Night Football game of all time. Are you kidding me? What was that all about, by the way? Congratulations to ESPN for that number that they put up there. There's been some big ratings in the past, but that was a bit surprising to me. But Aaron Rodgers delivers an audience. And the Buffalo Bills is a team that have a Super Bowl window. I picked the Bills to win the last two Super Bowls. I really thought the Bills were one of the best teams in football the last couple of years. And coming into this year, I think the Bills are a good team that has a chance of doing some special things. So Aaron Rodgers comes out on the field and he doesn't last four plays. So I was on the radio live on Mad Dog Sports Radio on Sirius XM Sunday, Monday nights. So I'm on Monday night, and all of a sudden Rodgers goes down. So I'm talking about the fact that he's running for his life. The offensive line can't pass protect. They suck. Let me begin by saying the Jets' offensive line sucks. And the Jets' offensive line has sucked for most of your life. If you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, the Jets are awful up front. That's pretty much the reason why the Jets haven't been competitive since Joe Namath, is the offensive line can't block. They got a really good defense. So Rodgers goes down as he's running for his life on the play before. You saw when he threw the ball 30 yards out of bounds. And I said live on the radio, this guy's running for his life. And I really thought that if he stayed in the game and he didn't have the Achilles tear, that eventually this guy was going to get sacked so violently that I was concerned. So on the play that he got sacked and he got up and then he went down again, I didn't think it was an Achilles at that moment. I thought he rolled his ankle. There's a lot of good people in the industry and doctors who said, they noticed that it was probably an Achilles or a calf or what happened there. And then we found out the following day that it was official after the MRI that he tore his Achilles. And to me, that is one of the most unique injuries I've ever seen in the history of sports due to the number and the money that's coming his way. Andrew Brandt, who's the former Packer executive, went out and put out a tweet here. Let me find it in a quick second. And he talked about the cap hit and how this is going to affect not only the Jets, but the Packers, and how much that injury will cost. Listen to this. According to Andrew Brandt, current cap charges for Aaron Rodgers to the Jets, 2023, $8.9 million, 2024, $17.1, 2025, $51.5 million. To the Packers this year in 2023, he's a $40.3 million cap hit. And then you add in the fact that the Green Bay Packers were supposed to get some good compensation for Aaron Rodgers if he played a certain amount of plays and took the team to the postseason and had a good record, and he lasted four plays. Not four games, not four quarters, but four plays. So if you take the magnitude of the number one media market, the highest rated Monday Night Football game of all time, and Aaron Rodgers, a four-time MVP and a future Hall of Famer, if you add that all into one, is that the biggest sports injury of your lifetime? I mean, Kobe tore his Achilles. We've seen a lot of players, baseball players, football players, basketball players, tennis players, whatever it is. but all time because of what he is worth to the Jets organization. How much Woody Johnson and Robert Saleh put into his pursuit to come to the Jets, hard knocks, season ticket prices, all of it, revenue, advertising. It's on the Mount Rushmore of the biggest sports injuries of all time. So that being said, everybody should be devastated. I'm a content provider. No matter where you watch me or hear me on any platform, I want to talk about Aaron Rodgers. I want to have Aaron Rodgers to talk about every day of the week. You know, we're in a time now in sports radio and television where there's just a lot of garbage topics and they get recycled every day. LeBron James. Well, it's Aaron Rodgers too. Aaron Rodgers offseason, if he's taking a yoga cleanse, if he's breaking up with one of his many girlfriends and fiancés, it's big for content. We are now living in the TMZ-ification of sports, and we need that type of content, and Aaron Rodgers provides it. Now, all of a sudden, Aaron Rodgers is gone. The debate that was earlier today on Tuesday was, will he ever play again? Yeah, he'll play again because he can't go out that way. You know, Tom Brady went out with a Super Bowl in Tampa Bay, came back. It didn't work out, but he didn't go out with a devastating injury. Kobe Bryant, again, an Achilles injury. Dominique Wilkins, Kevin Durant, whoever the player is, if they get a chance to rehab, and they all do, they're going to come back and at least attempt to play. So I think Aaron Rodgers will play again with the Jets, but I don't think he'll be anywhere near as in shape as he was this year. He looked fit. You saw Hard Knocks if you didn't. He was fit in Hard Knocks. He really looked lean and muscular for himself. He was ready to go. And I think he would have had the Jets in the playoffs. I had Buffalo winning the division. Miami looks pretty good. But I ended up picking the Jets over Miami for the wild card coming out of that division, and now it's gone. Zach Wilson will be the quarterback going forward, and I can't believe how they baby this kid. Number 2 pick overall out of BYU in his 3rd year, and is Nathaniel Hackett going to be afraid to give him the playbook? Is everybody going to give him a hot cup of cocoa and a blanket every time he takes the field and say, well, we got to dumb down the game. At least we can have the running game of the Jets. Dalvin Cook and Hall, we can run the ball. You're not going to win anything running the ball. You need a quarterback that can work off of play action. Why can't Zach Wilson do that? What the hell's so hard for Zach Wilson to grow up like a man and be a starting quarterback? He's supposed to be a franchise quarterback. And the Jets saw that he couldn't handle it, so they brought in Aaron Rodgers. I'll just say this on this platform, YouTube, tonight. I think Carson Wentz will be the quarterback. Here's why. Carson Wentz is a good player. He led the Eagles to the Super Bowl the year he got injured, and Nick Foles ended up winning it. But the Eagles don't get to the Super Bowl if it isn't for Carson Wentz. And then Carson Wentz went to the Commanders and the Colts, and those franchises were descending. They weren't ascending. Did you know that Carson Wentz worked this offseason with John Gruden? Went down to John Gruden's football camp, and John Gruden worked with him. He's a big, strong guy. He's fit. He can take a hit. And just like Baker Mayfield, who won week 1, and I'll get to that in a bit, I've always been a big fan of Baker Mayfield, but he's played on some bad teams. And even Tampa Bay is not a juggernaut now. If you take guys like Baker Mayfield and Carson Wentz, Cam Newton back in the day, you put them on good teams, they'll win. You put them on bad teams, they're not going to win, and maybe they get exposed. So as everybody wonders, is Matt Ryan going to come out of the booth for CBS? Can they trade Sam Darnold back to the Jets? Whatever it's going to be, Carson Wentz should be the guy. He's in shape. He's been working out. He could be the guy that could jump in there and potentially do something. But for that injury, it's one of the worst that I've ever seen as a fan or as a sports talk radio host. I think it's absolutely disastrous. And I can't believe it. And I have Jet fans in my family. My brother-in-law is a Jet fan. I grew up in Long Island, New York, in Massapequa, Long Island. And I know a lot of Jet fans. And the problem with the Jet fans is they feel like they're cursed. In a matter of 24 hours at MetLife Stadium, the Giants had the worst loss in the history of the franchise. Let me get to that as I look back at week 1 in the NFL from a tweet that I saw. What? Listen to this. No team has ever lost 40-0 or worse, lost a sack battle 7-0, lost a turnover battle 3-0 or worse, had a blocked field goal, returned for a touchdown, or threw a pick 6 in the same season. In the season. The Giants did that all in one game, according to The Athletic. So the Giants played the worst game in the history of the franchise. In this room where I record, I have a lot of Giants memorabilia. And I got a Jim Brown jersey behind me, Joe Montana, but I got a Phil Simms here in front of me, and I have some pictures of the Giants when I went and watched them win the Super Bowl with Eli Manning. And you go back, the Giants have won 8 world championships, 4 in the NFL era before the Super Bowl, and then 4 Super Bowls. Not many teams can say that. So the Giants have a deep, long history. And that was their worst game of all time against a rivalry in a Sunday night home opener. How the hell could that happen? The Giants made the playoffs last year and won a playoff game at Minnesota, beating the Vikings, who won 13 games, and they don't show up. I talk about my dad a lot. My dad's 85 years old. I'll reference him a lot. And I talked to him earlier today, and he made a great point. He said, the Giants were afraid. I said, what do you mean, Dad? He goes, they were afraid to get touched, to touch anyone, to tackle. They didn't want to play in that game. And believe me, my dad knows a lot more about sports than I do. And he was right about that. He was right about that overall, that the Giants weren't ready to play. That's on Brian Daboll. We clearly saw that. We're right back to Daniel Jones being the old fumbling, bumbling, running for his life Daniel Jones. And the defense couldn't tackle, but most importantly, the offensive line had one of the worst rated games in the history of Pro Football Focus. Go look at the numbers. So the Giants do that Sunday night. Also, let me tell you, I was confused how you play a nationally televised game Sunday night and then a nationally televised game on Monday night. That just didn't make sense to me. In the same stadium. What the hell was that? You know, if the Giants played at 4 o'clock, played on Sunday at 4 o'clock, and then the Jets are playing the next day in primetime, okay. But they're both playing primetime games. And there are several conspiracy theorists who are out there saying, well, the turf wasn't in good shape. The turf took on a lot of rain. There's been problems with the turf, even though it was covered up. They've had all these concerts there, which they have over the last couple of weeks. I don't believe in conspiracy theories. I don't. But I believe that we have to get to natural grass. The problem is you can't have it in Pittsburgh and in Buffalo and at that dump MetLife, because the field will get torn up every week. And you can't afford to lay down new sod every week, so they play on the turf. Did Aaron Rodgers tear his Achilles because of the turf? I don't know. I think he's just an older guy that pushed off wrong. But did he push off because he was getting sacked? Yeah. He pushed off his heel, and that happened. Did he push off on a bad turf? Yeah, I think we could say that Giants, Meadowlands, now MetLife, is a bad turf. So all that comes together. But I want to just say this again, and I appreciate you following us on YouTube and at Twitter, at JT the Brick. And what we're going to start to do here coming up is I'm going to start to do this live so we can take live questions in the chat. And we can go back and forth, and you can hit me on Twitter at JT the Brick. Because as you tell, I'm not used to talking with anyone else other than myself. I have Tom Looney, my old partner here, but I talk at a fast pace. My wife says I need to slow down more, but there's always a clock in my mind saying go, go, go. So maybe on YouTube, by reading your tweets or in the chat here, I can slow down and you can participate with me. The curse of MetLife Stadium, it's real. It's a dump. I live in Las Vegas. We have Allegiant Stadium. I happen to call 3 games play-by-play in the preseason for the Raiders on radio, as Jason Horowitz, the voice of the Raiders, moved to TV just for the preseason. And I called games at SoFi Stadium, Allegiant Stadium, and the Palace in Dallas, AT&T Stadium. MetLife is a bleeping dump. The day they built it, it was behind the times by 5 years. And they should knock it down, blow it up, and build something in New York City, something in Long Island City for the Jets, whatever you want. The history of the swamp and East Rutherford, it takes people 2 hours to get out of that parking lot. It's 2 hours to get to the game no matter where you live. It stinks. And the Giants and the Jets, in a matter of 24 hours, had 2 of the lowest moments in franchise history. The Jets won the game, but the Jets much rather have taken a loss. They would have loved to have taken a loss and had Aaron Rodgers and win that game. Nice job by Robert Saleh to keep that team together after Aaron Rodgers went down. I can't imagine what it was like for Robert Saleh at halftime there as everybody's hugging Aaron Rodgers, and he's telling everybody that he loves him. Wow. I mean, that's good coaching by Robert Saleh to get that team up and ready. All right, so this is Tuesday night. I think it's a good night for me to come in here for a half hour, 45 minutes, and recap week 1 after Thursday night football, Sunday football, and Monday night football. So as we go back, I'll start in order. The Chiefs lost to the Lions 21-20. Do you believe the rumor that Travis Kelce's dating Taylor Swift? Ooh, Taylor Swift would come down my ladder of icons if that's going on. Not a big fan of Kelsey or the Chiefs working for the Raider Nation. But that was shocking before I came on and saw that. What happened in that game is that the Lions, I thought the Lions played well, and the Lions looked bigger and stronger than Kansas City. No Kelsey in that game. Jones ends up signing late. But in this game, I thought that the Lions looked bigger and stronger and more physical. Goff is a good quarterback if he can establish the running game and work off the play action. He threw for 253 and a touchdown. Montgomery had 21 carries for 74 yards and a touchdown. The Lions will be competitive this year, and I have them in the playoffs as a wild card team. The Lions will be good if they can establish the running game, because I think that Jared Goff is one of the best play action quarterbacks in the NFL. He's already played in the Super Bowl. He's won an NFC championship game. He stays strong in the pocket. And if he can have the linebackers stay at home and the safety bite on a play action, man, he throws a beautiful ball. Goff's always thrown a great ball, and he can get the ball out. He can make that long out throw across the hash marks, and he won that game. And if Travis Kelce would have played that game, woulda, coulda, shoulda, Kansas City would have won. Now, keep an eye on Kansas City as they play Sunday. It's the Jacksonville Jaguars home opener. And Jacksonville had a walkover game to Indianapolis. They beat them 31-21. Calvin Ridley in that game, remember, he was suspended for a year for gambling. 8 receptions, 101 yards, and a touchdown. Trevor Lawrence, 241 and 2 touchdowns in the game. They beat the Colts, who have a chance to be the worst team in football this year with Arizona. The Jaguars are 1-0, and they return home to take on the Chiefs. And Jacksonville doesn't have a great home field advantage, but it's going to be the best it's ever been with Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne, Doug Peterson as the head coach. They went to the playoffs last year and won a game. That place is going to be a madhouse. So Kansas City, after 9 days of sitting back and stewing in that loss, has to become the road team for Jacksonville's opener. I'll get to the point spreads before I get out of here, but that's not going to be an easy win for Kansas City. The Panthers lost to the Falcons 24-10. Pitts had 44 yards receiving for Atlanta in that game. You know, when you look at Bryce Young, 148 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. He looked really small to me, but we knew that ahead of time. I'm not going to judge him early on, and the Falcons are one of those teams where they can beat the teams that are inferior to them, but can they beat some of the better teams along the way? I don't have the Falcons or the Panthers in the playoffs, but the Falcons and the Atlanta fans got to be happy with that 1-0 start. Browns beat the Bengals 24-3. Why did Joe Burrow play in that game? Joe Burrow's never played in the preseason because of COVID, the COVID issues with preseason, and what happened when he got injured twice, coming in and this year injured, so he hadn't had the opportunity to play. I don't know why Cincinnati ramped him up to play in that game. The Browns defense does historically a good job against Burrow. It's a short sample size, but they're really good, and they didn't have to ramp him up. He could have sat out week 1. Burrow was awful in that game. He was terrible. And Joe Burrow got blown out. He couldn't get anything going in the passing game. His body language sucked, and they're 0-1. And I got Cincinnati going to the Super Bowl. Quick reminder, my Super Bowl pick is Dallas over Cincinnati. And I think Cincinnati will right the ship at some point in time, but there's something with that Browns defense. And Deshaun Watson, if he can get going, he ran for a TD. He's going to be running a lot this year. He's going to try to get everybody to think about him again with his legs. I think he's going to have a pretty good season here. All right, let's move on to a couple other games. The Buccaneers beat the Vikings 20-17. For Skull and all the Viking fans out there, let me remind you a couple things. The last 2 games the Vikings played at home, they lost a playoff game to the Giants and Daniel Jones. And on 4th down, Kirk Cousins checked down and threw underneath. And then he lost the game, and there was a camera crew with him for quarterbacks, the documentary on Netflix. And he went back home and he gave his kids a bath and read a bedtime story for them. It's nice. I mean, that's great for a dad. If I would have lost that game as a quarterback, I would have went to a bar and my wife wouldn't have been able to find me. She would have to call the FBI because I'd be drowning my sorrows, and Kirk Cousins is reading stories to his little kids. He's a great guy. He isn't an elite quarterback. So it's the same old Vikings. Even Viking fans know who call into my shows. Yeah, we're the Vikings. We're going to win some games. We're going to lose the bigger ones. And Kirk Cousins starts off the season losing to Baker Mayfield. I'm a Baker Mayfield fan. I always have been. My son went to Oklahoma. Baker went there. Baker got a statue at Oklahoma and won the Heisman Trophy. He's better than people think. I'll tell you who would love Baker Mayfield tonight, the Jets. But Baker Mayfield has the Buccaneers 1-0, and I think the Vikings are in trouble here. I think the Vikings have a good chance of starting off 0-2. I'll get to that in a little bit. Derek Carr won his first game, but it was a nail-biter over the Titans, 16-15. Tannehill had 3 interceptions. If he has 2 instead of 3, I think the Titans win that game. Derek Carr made a great throw to close out that game and put a bow on it. For Derek Carr, he threw for 305 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Olave had 112 yards receiving on 8 receptions. Good win for Derek Carr. I have the Saints winning 10 or 11 games and making the playoffs and hosting a home game. So I expect this from the Saints when they play teams that they're even with and teams that they're better than. Saints are going to win all those games. The question is, can they make a run in the playoffs? And the Niners just blew out the Steelers 30-7. Purdy threw for 2 touchdowns. I'm not a Purdy guy. I don't believe in Mr. Irrelevant yet. I don't think the last pick in the draft is going to be better than the second pick of the draft. Right? Zach Wilson was the second pick of the draft. No one wanted Purdy in the 6th round. No one wanted Purdy in the 7th round. If they wanted him in the 7th round, everybody would have traded next year's 6th round pick to get him. No one wanted him. And now Brock Purdy plays on a team that might have the best roster in football, and he's winning games. The Steelers were dead on arrival. McCaffrey tore him up with 152 yards on the ground. It's the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. They don't give up that many yards, but McCaffrey's different. McCaffrey had a great game. Kenny Pickett was nowhere to be found. The Niners, and there was a lot of chatter about the Niners in the offseason, and I participated in some of it. Trey Lance getting nothing for him after giving up 3 first-rounders from him. The Niners came out there and shut everybody up. Nice win for the Niners. The Niners are going to win 12 or 13 games this year, and I think they're going to fight with the Cowboys for home field advantage throughout the NFC. That's not a good win for them. That's a great win. That's a great win for the Niners to open up on the other side of the country against the Steelers and win that game. Commanders had to work to beat the Cardinals 20-16. The Cardinals are the worst team out there. Sam Howell, 202 yards and a touchdown and interception in that game. Cardinals are going to lose a lot of games this year. They were in the game down the stretch, but the Commanders closed it out, outscoring Arizona 10-0 in the final frame to win that game. So nice for the Commanders to get going. Ravens beat the Texans 25-9. It was the birth of C.J. Stroud, 242 yards. I liked his composure in that game. He just has nothing on offense. He has no weapons there. The Ravens, Lamar Jackson, he was able to run the ball, 6 carries for 38 yards, but J.K. Dobbins was lost for the year. And with him being injured again, and they lost him the year before, what a devastating injury. I think that Jonathan Taylor, who was talked about going to Miami if Indianapolis will trade him, I think the fit now is the Ravens. I don't know if Indianapolis wants to do that unless they get the compensation. But if I'm the Ravens now with J.K. Dobbins gone for the year, I'm going to go out and get a really good running back on the market in Jonathan Taylor. Packers beat the Bears 38-20. You know, everybody, there was a lot of talk about the Bears in the offseason. You know what I'm talking about, right? People are saying this is going to be the year of the Bears. Justin Fields is going to elevate his game. It was all about Jordan Love. Jordan Love, 245 and 3 touchdowns. What a performance for him. And I'd hate to do this, but I'm going to do this. Aaron Rodgers lasted 4 plays for the Jets, and Jordan Love had arguably the second or third best quarterback stat run of the whole week 1. And the Packers are really happy to have him. Aaron Rodgers is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, Packer quarterback of all time. But the Jordan Love era is here. And in the opener, 3 touchdown passes, and the Bears got blown out in the second half in their own building. Bears better watch out or that coaching staff's going to get fired if they can't develop Justin Fields. And that was a home game for the Bears. Home game. Rabid crowd there, and the Bears really had nothing going. They couldn't get the offense going at all. The Bears will always have 1 or 2 great plays on the Sports Center, but in that game, there wasn't much. Raider Nation unite. You see see behind me? That's Fred Biletnikoff. That's his jersey. He actually just called me. I'm not lying. I just missed a call from one of the all-time greats, Fred Biletnikoff. Raiders beat the Broncos 17-6. I'm not surprised. I said they beat them. How about all the crap about the Broncos every offseason? Oh, the Broncos are going to the playoffs. No, they're not. The Raiders have beat the Broncos 7 in a row, not 2 in a row. The Raiders fired 2 head coaches of the Broncos, Nathaniel Hackett and Vic Fangio. Sean Payton opened up the game with an onside kick because reportedly he wanted to wash away that terrible stink of the Broncos last year and open up the game. He gave the Raiders and Jimmy Garoppolo field position, and Jimmy Garoppolo scored on the opening drive. Also, Jimmy G closed the game out on a 3rd and 7. He ran 8 yards for a first down. That was the biggest run for a Raiders quarterback since Rich Gannon and his MVP run with the Silver and Black. Jimmy G looked good. The Raider defense was flying around, and now the Raiders have to go to Buffalo. After Buffalo lost, it'll be the Bills' home opener. Eagles beat the Patriots 25-20. The only thing I want to say in that game is Jalen Hurts. They had an early lead in that game. They were up 16-0. They lost the lead but closed it out. Jalen Hurts doesn't care if he throws for 300 yards, runs for 100. He doesn't care. He just wants to win. And they were able to win that game. That I wouldn't call that a trap game, playing Bill Belichick. But Tom Brady was in the house, everybody. You don't think Robert Kraft wanted to sneak up on the Eagles who went to the Super Bowl? He didn't bring Tom Brady in month number 2 or at the end of the year. He brought him in week 1 to get the crowd going. It was pouring rain. Brady was there. But the Eagles get out of there with a win. That's a good win because they didn't play great. And I think the Patriots played them really hard, so the Eagles 1-0. Dolphins beat the Chargers 36-34. The Chargers are always going to Charger. How did the Chargers lose this game? They lost because Tua had the best opening week in the NFL. 466 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. Tyreek Hill, 11 receptions, 215 yards, and 2 touchdowns. You can give the player of the week to Tyreek Hill, or you can give it to Tua. The Dolphins are scary good on offense. And the Chargers made a bunch of bonehead decisions. I think Brandon Staley, their head coach, could be fired at their bye week in week 5 if the team starts off 1-3. They got some tough games coming up. Chargers are out of the gate. They lose a home game. Kellen Moore is the offensive coordinator there. I wouldn't be surprised if he's the head coach this year. If Staley doesn't turn this around quickly, I think they're going to fire him, and why not fire him this year and move on from him? And one of the biggest surprises is the Rams beat the Seahawks 30-13. Matthew Stafford threw for 334 yards. My bad, I should have told you this. I went to Rams camp in California, Southern California, as they played the Raiders in a joint practice. It was a practice, and Jimmy G went up against Stafford. And I was looking on the sidelines, and I told someone, man, Stafford looks great. He looked really fit. He looked young. You could just tell he won a Super Bowl. He got battered. And in the offseason, he got healthy again. I wish I would have told everybody that. And you could have bet on that because that was a huge upset win for Seattle, losing that game. And Stafford played great. And I mentioned as we started off, the Giants lost 40-0 to the Cowboys. 40-0, disgraceful. And the Jets on Monday night beating the Bills 22-16. So that's my recap. I think I'm going to try to do this every Tuesday night here on YouTube. You could tell everybody about it for me. I'm about 28 minutes into this, and I'll keep going a little bit longer, and we'll take some tweets from people who want to tweet along the way. My Twitter is at JTTheBrick if you want to get through on that, and we continue talking about this. This one comes in from Mikey Two Guns. JT, are the Pats for real? I say yes. I'm a Belichick guy. Everybody's a Belichick guy. Pats are always going to be for real with Belichick. He'll have the better game plan. He'll have his team coached up. But I don't think the Patriots make the playoffs this year as we take a look at this. You know, a lot of people are mocking Aaron Rodgers' injury. That really bothers me. This one comes in from Jay Millardo. He says, JT, should the Jets look to add Jameis or another journeyman quarterback? Yes. I think that Carson Wentz will be the quarterback. I'm really happy that you brought up Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston threw for 5,000 yards in this league. Is young. He's the backup to Derek Carr. I think the Saints want to keep him around in case Carr gets dinged to have a player like that. So as we look at all of this, another one coming in from John. He says, JT, were the Giants that bad or are the Cowboys that good or perhaps a little of both? Well, I'll go and tell you this. I picked the Cowboys to win the Super Bowl, and I never thought that the Giants would be that bad. I never thought that the Giants would play at a level like that at any time, and they did. So a couple of the tweets coming in at JT the Brick, and soon we'll open up this YouTube chat. All right, so I'm in Vegas here. We can talk some of the moving lines. I'm not a gambler, but I put some of the best gamblers on the radio. That's what my legacy is. I don't gamble. If I did, I'd live under a bridge, and my wife would bring me soup for dinner every night in a sleeping bag. But I like to talk gambling, and I like to give my opinion, and I like to put people on the radio or on these platforms that can make you money. Couple of games that jump out at me. The Chargers are a 3-point favorite, opened up 3.5 at Tennessee. Mike Vrabel's a good coach. He's coming off a loss. The Chargers are coming off a loss. Remember I told you Brandon Staley could get fired early this year. It's a make-or-break game for both teams. This is a playoff atmosphere as they open up the stadium in Tennessee, and they'll have a new one coming up in a couple of years. Must-win game for both teams. Chargers got to win this game. If they start off 0-2, the heat's going to be on their head coach. And Tennessee's going to have to make a decision with Ryan Tannehill to bench him and let one of the young quarterbacks like Levis play if they start off 0-2. I'm not going to give you every game, but I'll just give you a couple of the lines that I like a lot. The early line on Detroit, Seattle was Detroit minus 2.5. Now it's 6. Why is that? Well, Detroit beat Kansas City, and they've had 9 days off, and Seattle got boat raced by the Rams. So I think Seattle will bounce back, but I like Detroit to win that game, but I think Seattle will cover the spread. I mentioned Vegas and Buffalo. I work for the Raiders. I can't pick their games here, but the Raiders are getting a 9.5 points. They're getting 9.5 with Jimmy Garoppolo, Devontae Adams, Josh Jacobs, and you saw the way that the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen played. Bet with your wallet, not with your head. The Jacksonville game's fascinating. They're a home dog, but I have a lot of gamblers who say when a home favorite loses in week 1, you go back and bet that team no matter what. One of our great listeners who's on this platform too, Mike in Staten, Italy, he sent me a great text during the show here as we're looking at, let me find it for you here. This is maybe something for the sharps if you want to gamble. His theory is you always go and bet week 2, the home favorites that lost week 1. That list includes the Chiefs, Vikings, Broncos, Chargers, and Seahawks. Again, I repeat that. From a really sharp gambler that bets real big money, all these home favorites lost. The Chiefs, Vikings, Broncos, Chargers, and Seahawks. So maybe there's a play for you there. Because Aaron Rodgers got hurt, Dallas went from a 3-point favorite to 9.5. That might go as high as 10, depending on what happens. And Miami is a 2.5-point favorite at New England. Keep an eye on Belichick in this game and New England in a bounce-back spot because Miami's got a lot of travel. Miami went all the way to Los Angeles, went all the way back to Miami. They're going up to New England. New England's been home the whole time, and they're coming off a loss here. You got 2 games on Monday night, New Orleans, Carolina. New Orleans is a 3-point road favorite in that game. And Cleveland, Pittsburgh, as Cleveland is a 2.5-point favorite at Pittsburgh. If Pittsburgh loses that game, they go 0-2, and they're going to be in big-time trouble there. So we'll give you some gambling picks, some edges here. And throughout the course of the week, follow me here on YouTube, YouTube YT. So it's JT the Brick YT for YouTube at the end. Please share this with everyone if you like it. Please tweet at me or we'll have a chat open here in the next week or two. My son came up with this idea because he knows I pace the house when I'm not on the radio. I don't like when I'm on the radio, but I can't be on the radio 5-6 hours a day. I have a local show every day on the flagship of the Raiders. I do Mad Dog Sunday, Monday. I have 2 TV shows that I'm a part of. And at night, I have a tough time going to bed without talking to sports fans. So I think this YouTube channel is going to work out really well. And we appreciate you coming on here. So leave us a response. Please subscribe here to the channel. And the best part is share it if you can with your friends here so we can build up the numbers, just like podcasts and subscriptions. That's what we're here to do. We want more and more people to see it. I've had a vast audience throughout my career, overnights, early in the evening. Whenever you've been able to hear me in the past, I really appreciate that you still are here for me. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And we'll be back here again. Just follow me on Twitter at JT the Brick, and you'll get the alerts when I'm going up and I'm going live on YouTube. Have a great one, everybody.